bus screeched as tires bit into wet asphalt, and for one frozen second, the world narrowed to headlights, rain, and a hand raised in desperate refusal. She stopped the driver with nothing but fear and faith, never imagining that the face behind the glass would belong to the man who had saved her life 10 years ago, on a night when she had already decided she did not deserve to be saved. If you believe that kindness can circle back, that second chances are real even when time tries to bury them, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. These stories live because people still believe goodness can return when we least expect it. Her name was Sarah Whitman, and she stood at a lonely bus stop on the edge of Cleveland, Ohio, soaked by a cold spring rain that felt like it was trying to rinse her out of the city altogether. The night had been long, the kind that stretched and bent around bad news and unpaid bills. She had worked 2 shifts back to back at a nursing home, her feet aching, her hands smelling faintly of antiseptic and tiredness. Her phone had died sometime after midnight, taking with it the last thin thread connecting her to anyone who might care that she was standing alone, counting breaths, waiting for a bus that always seemed late when life already felt late. 10 years earlier, Sarah had been someone else. She had been younger, lighter, and far more reckless with hope. Back then, she lived in Dayton, Ohio, in a small apartment that smelled of burnt coffee and old dreams. She had been 22 and convinced she was invisible, sliding through a world that never quite noticed when she showed up or when she disappeared. That night, she had walked along the river with a storm brewing inside her chest, convinced that stepping forward might finally quiet the noise. She had not planned on a stranger noticing her shoes at the edge, or the way her shoulders shook as if she were trying to break apart silently. The stranger had been a man named Michael Turner, a city bus driver finishing his last route. He had pulled over because something about the scene felt wrong, because years of watching people get on and off had taught him that despair had a posture of its own. He had spoken to her without judgment, not as a rescuer, but as someone willing to stand in the rain and let another human be broken without turning away. He had waited until the shaking slowed, until the night loosened its grip, until Sarah took one step back, then another. He had driven her to a hospital and stayed until dawn stained the sky pale, leaving before she woke because he believed that sometimes help should leave no fingerprints. Life moved on, as it always does, piling years onto years. Sarah rebuilt herself with uneven bricks. She went back to school. She learned to smile without flinching. She met and lost love. She found purpose in caring for the elderly, in holding hands at the ends of lives and whispering comfort into rooms heavy with goodbye. She thought about the man from the river sometimes, wondering if he knew that a single night could ripple so far forward. But she never searched for him. Gratitude felt too fragile to chase. Now in Cleveland, with rain pooling around her shoes and the city humming with distant sirens, Sarah raised her arm as the bus approached too fast. She stepped forward on instinct, fear sharpening her senses, forcing her into motion. The bus slowed, then stopped, steam hissing like a sigh. She leaned toward the windshield, ready to apologize, ready to explain, ready to ask if she could still get on even though she was soaked and shaking. The door opened, and time folded in on itself. The driver looked older, his hair threaded with gray, lines settling around his eyes like gentle parentheses. But the eyes were the same, steady and kind, holding a recognition that landed between them before either could name it. The rain blurred the edges of the world as Sarah climbed aboard, heart pounding. With a memory she had never expected to touch again. Michael had driven buses for nearly 3 decades, through snowstorms and heat waves, through neighborhoods rising and falling. He had carried laughter and grief, grocery bags and folded prayers. He had never forgotten the young woman by the river, though he had told himself that forgetting might be a kindness, a way of letting her life belong fully to her. Seeing Sarah again felt like finding a bookmark in a book he had loved and finished, proof that the story had continued. The ride unfolded in silence heavy with meaning. Sarah sat near the front, hands clasped, feeling the weight of 10 years pressing close. She noticed how Michael still checked the mirrors twice, how his shoulders relaxed when the bus was steady. She felt a gratitude so large it bordered on painful, a need to acknowledge what could not be repaid. The city slid past in streaks of light, a moving backdrop to a reunion written by chance. As the bus neared her stop, Sarah stood, legs unsteady, heart loud. She felt the old fear flicker, then fade, replaced by something sturdier. When she stepped off into the rain, she turned back, letting her face say what words might cheapen. Michael met her gaze and nodded, a small, solemn recognition of shared history and separate futures. Sarah walked home lighter, the rain no longer biting. She thought about how lives intersect briefly and profoundly, how a single decision to notice can echo across a decade. She thought about the patients she cared for, the moments when she chose to stay present, even when it hurt. She realized that kindness was not a single act, but a chain, each link strengthened by the last. Michael finished his route that night with a quiet smile. He parked the bus, hung his jacket, and stepped into the cool dawn, feeling that the world, for all its noise, still made room for grace. He had never needed thanks. Seeing Sarah alive, standing strong in her own story, was more than enough. If this story has reached into your heart, if it has reminded you of a moment when someone changed your life without knowing it, please take a moment now to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps these stories find others who need them. And before we end, I invite you to comment below with a single word that describes how this story made you feel, because your voice matters here. Somewhere in Ohio, rain still falls and buses still run, carrying strangers whose lives brush past one another in quiet miracles. And sometimes, when a hand is raised in the dark, the universe answers with a familiar face, reminding us that the good we give has a way of finding its way home.